Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Today's video is going to give you a basic understanding of Soviet rangefinder cameras. I'm going to look at 3 brands, Feds, ZORKIs and KIEVs, include some sample photos and then take a closer look at the Fed 2 versus the ZORKI 4 in particular. Hey guys, Matt here from MrLeica.com. So my best advice when anybody's looking to buy a Leica M rangefinder camera, doesn't matter if it's a film camera or digital camera, is first you need to decide, do you enjoy the rangefinder camera experience? You're much better off to buy a cheap or more affordable Soviet rangefinder camera before buying a Leica M camera to see if you like the way rangefinder cameras work. When you then fall in love with rangefinder cameras, such as these beauties, then maybe it is time to look at perhaps Leica 3 cameras or the more popular Leica M cameras, both film and digital. The main difference is a brand new Leica M6 is going to cost you over £4,000. These are going to cost you closer to £40. First, I think it's better to take like a step back view of Soviet rangefinder cameras. So they're made by 3 major brands. It was Fed, ZORKI and KIEV. The Feds and the ZORKIs have a Leica origin, whereas the KIEVs come from a Contax origin. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so if you've ever seen my video on the ZORKI C or ZORKI 1, this is pretty much the same as the Fed one, and these cameras are based on Leica 1 cameras, or Leica 3 cameras, probably more commonly known. I need more space. Okay, so here is a ZORKI C, here is a Leica 3. You can see they're pretty much identical. And this is the same whether it's a Fed 1 or a ZORKI 1. So both the Feds and the ZORKIs have got the same Leica screw mount as found on all the Leica 3 cameras and maybe things like the Bessa R and any other screw mount camera out there. So if you're using screw mount lenses, you need to be looking at the ZORKIs or the Feds. The Feds and the ZORKIs are Leica clone cameras, meaning they're based on Leica cameras but they're made in the Soviet factories. That meant as the models kind of increased in number and got more modern, they became, some may say, less Leica-like with each iteration, but they all keep the same Leica screw mount. So as you can see, the ZORKI 4 is much bigger and it's got a much bigger combined viewfinder rangefinder now. So now this is more similar to, if I can find it, I'm buried in cameras, a Leica M3. So this is a bit like, say, you could say this is a Soviet Leica M3. This is obviously a real Leica M3. But they both now have the big combined viewfinder rangefinder. If you actually want one that's even more like an M3, get the ZORKI 4K, because the ZORKI 4 has got a rewind knob, the ZORKI 4K has got a rewind lever, film advance lever, sorry, the same as on an M3. Same with the ZORKIs, as the Fed numbers increased, they also got bigger, and they went from a separate viewfinder rangefinder to a combined viewfinder rangefinder. So you can see in this Fed 2 here, combined viewfinder rangefinder, perhaps more similar to the ZORKI 4. So what about KIEV cameras? So KIEV cameras originate from Contax cameras, but unlike ZORKIs and Feds, which are just a clone of a Leica, the KIEV cameras are actually Contax cameras made with Contax tools, because if you see my KIEV video, I can link it at the end. KIEV cameras are made with Contax tools because after the war they moved the Contax factory tooling and engineers to the Soviet factory in simple terms, and so the KIEVs are made with German tools rather than Feds and ZORKIs, which are Soviet cameras made with Soviet tools, if that makes sense. For that reason, the Contax cameras held a much higher price tag, and they were seen by most as the best of the 3 brands and the highest quality of the 3 cameras. So if we look here, we've got the Contax, and then next to it we've got a KIEV, and as you can see they're pretty much identical. A bit from the top and spin them around. The biggest difference between KIEV cameras and the Feds and the ZORKIs, KIEV cameras are Contax RF mount, meaning Contax mount. So all your Leica screw mount cameras will not fit this camera, and you can't get adapters to adapt screw mount lenses to Contax mount. The good news is if you've got Contax mount lenses, you can get adapters to then adapt them to screw mount, if you can follow that. So I use contact lenses on screw mount cameras and I use Contax lenses on Leica M mount cameras. Again, I've done a video on adapters. As I say, I've done a full detailed video on KIEV cameras. So let's now take a closer look at the Fed 2 against the ZORKI 4. Okay, so just for completeness, Fed 2, ZORKI 4 and an M3. I will now move the M3, but just to give you an idea of the size difference next to the KIEV and the Fed 2. roughly the same size, I would say. So both of these Soviet cameras are very affordable, Leica M3 alternatives. And I say Leica M3 alternatives because they've both got 50mm combined viewfinder rangefinder setups. They both have a cold shoe or accessory shoe. They both have a rewind knob design. They both have a film advance knob design. They're both screw mount lens design, but there are a few differences. So you can see on the front of the KIEV 4, it's got a self timer. There's no self timer on the Fed 2. Both cameras also have a built-in diopter, which is actually better than Leica M cameras. It amazes me how the older cameras have got a better design than the Leica M cameras. So as you can see here, this lever on both cameras is your diopter. So for glasses wearers like myself, it's fantastic. Again, if I guess we look on the top of the camera, you can see the film advance knob, film rewind knob, cold shoe, film counter. So the difference between the Fed 2 and the ZORKI 4, the ZORKI 4 gives you a top shutter speed of 1/1000th of a second. The Fed 2's only got a maximum of 500ths of a second. On the back, they look very similar, as you can see. So the viewfinder window looks very similar on both until you look through the viewfinder. And this is where the difference is absolutely huge. The base length of the Fed 2 is slightly longer, which is the distance between the two windows. The best way I can explain this, you put your glasses on, you look through the ZORKI 4, everything's big and bright and clear and very, very easy to focus. You then take your glasses off and look through the Fed 2 and everything just looks much more distant. The reason for this is it's got a much lower magnification viewfinder compared to the ZORKI 4, meaning the ZORKI 4 is much better for critical focusing than the Fed 2. The condition of old cameras varies widely. If you've got a high contrast rangefinder patch, that's going to make it easy to focus. In this particular ZORKI 4, the rangefinder patch is less contrasty than my Fed 2, but because the magnification is so great on the ZORKI 4, this is much, much better for portraits. And this would be better, the Fed 2 would be better for me for, say, landscape photography, street photography, anything where you don't need to do any kind of critical focus. The ZORKI 4 is more similar to like M3. You can see on the bottom of the camera, they're very, very similar. And film loading on both cameras is also very similar. So unlike an M camera where you only have one lock mechanism on the bottom, on nearly all, I think, Soviet cameras, you have two. And then instead of the bottom plate moving, the whole back moves like that. Let me know in the comments which is your favourite Soviet rangefinder camera, so they can see the back's missing. Okay, so how do these two cameras sound? First we have the Fed 2 camera. Pretty crisp. Obviously it would depend on each copy of your camera to an extent. Now the ZORKI 4. That's louder. I think they say that the ZORKI cameras are louder than Fed cameras, but if you're a Soviet expert, let us know in the comments. I think that's true. What about KIEV cameras for completeness? Oh, there's film in it. I'll use the Contax. It's basically the same. The Contax, which is basically KIEV, feels nicer made and more precision feeling. Okay, Contax. Are you ready? Pretend it's a KIEV. This sounds the best. So another difference between the three brands. ZORKIs and Feds are based on Leicas. Leicas use focal plane cloth shutters going horizontally, as you can see the cloth shutters. Contax and KIEVs use vertical, like metal blind shutters. So if I wind it on, hopefully you can see it. See it move travelling this way instead of this way, and that makes it a quieter camera. Lots of the KIEVs especially, and then the later Feds and ZORKIs, have some sort of often selenium style light meter. Okay, so the question you then may have is, what is the best Soviet rangefinder camera? It probably depends a little bit on your lens choice and the size of camera that you like to use. If we assumed all cameras had the same lens, KIEV cameras are by far the best. Build quality wise and rangefinder, KIEVs are king for the rangefinder. Super accurate focusing from the very long base length. I'll just show you quick to give you an idea. Look at the distance between that and that. The longer this distance, in simple terms, the more accurate your rangefinder is. So this is absolutely going to kick butt compared to a Leica M6 if you line up both cameras and try and accurately focus a fast lens. And both lenses were the same, this would win hands down. Leica's not always better. So favourite cameras for me is probably the KIEV 4. I do have, I think, 3 or 4 KIEV cameras. And the one I normally take when I'm travelling is the KIEV 4. You can see some example photos here of portraits and things shot in Poland, and if you fit a good lens, perhaps something like the Zeiss Sonar 50 1.5, shoot it at f2, really great images. Now if you want to limit yourself to screw mount cameras, I'd probably recommend the ZORKI 4 or the ZORKI 4K. Many people like the ZORKI 4K because it's got the film advance lever. I bought the ZORKI 4 because it's cheaper and I don't need the film advance lever personally. I'll be honest, I've not really used my ZORKI 4 camera. I did shoot a test roll yesterday and on a model shoot last week, and so the film is developing in the kitchen as we speak, and if I can get it scanned in time before the end of this video, I'll include some sample photos. I've used the FED again very little. I did a few test photos and then I shot it briefly to do some samples and selfies for this video, but other than that I've not really used it. So we'll maybe have to do a full video on the ZORKI 4 and FED 2 at a later date if I give them some more prolonged use. If you love small rangefinder cameras the same as me, you know I love my Leica 3 cameras. Your best bet is a early FED 1 or say a ZORKI 1, those early model cameras. Very cheap, and they normally come with an Industar 50mm 3.5 lens. Just quickly talk about lenses. The ZORKI 4 comes with a Jupiter 8 f2 lens, which is a sonar clone. The FED 2 comes with an Industar 26M, which is a 52mm f2.8. I think that might be Tessar. Feel free to correct me in the comments. Very sharp lens. KIEVs also came with Jupiter 8 lenses. The earlier models and later models, some of them came with the Helios 103. I still need to do a video on that lens, so feel free to hit subscribe if you want to see that video or any of my other videos to come. In terms of prices, I'll put links to eBay below and then just search either FED, ZORKI or KIEV, whichever one takes your fancy. Try and get one that says film tested, and you can pick up absolute bargains. They normally come with a lens attached, and if you can find one film tested, you might be able to get one for under $100 or under £100 not film tested, and maybe $150 film tested. Roughly, the prices vary massively. If you love the idea of a cheaper lens mount, the Contax RF mount, have a look at the KIEV video next. And if you enjoyed this video, please smash the like button and feel free to subscribe. I think only 60% of you are subscribed so far, so that means you're probably missing out on videos like this that you might find interesting. As always, a massive thanks to my awesome patrons. Watch this video next.